With the Wonderlands release on Steam and Chaos Chamber cap increased to 50, I figured that now would be a great time to showcase my updated melee build, the Dragon Knight. This build is a partial DLC build, which means you must own the Coiled Captors and Molten Mirrors DLC to get the most out of the build. But there is enough tools available in the build for a vanilla gear setup, if that's what you prefer. I've stress tested this build for 2 weeks in Chaos Chamber 50, all elite difficulty modifiers, no queen buffs, and only Dragon Lord debuffs when possible to maximize our Chaos Crystals per run. I would describe this build as an endgame build for Clawbringers interested in a melee playstyle that will trade damage for better survivability to breeze through Chaos 50 content. The footage you see in this video is during my Elite Mode Boss Rush test runs on intense difficulty. Guns we have specialized and polarized into melee exclusive damage. We use the Slapping Livewire for general mobbing and the Slapping Stab-O-Matic situationally for boss fights. A few additional notes: the Livewire AoE damage on every 2 melee attacks has been adjusted from gun damage to melee damage, and the modifier on the level 40 Livewire, Chaotic, Volatile, Primordial, or Ascendant, does not increase the melee damage of the weapon, only the gun damage. The Stab-O-Matic is a ranged option for some fights where doing melee damage is not possible, such as Imelda or mechanics during Theodore. The Stab-O-Matic, instead of dealing gun damage, deals melee damage and will benefit from perks such as Oath of Thunder. Lastly, we have a Knuckle Tooth Raider to deal an additional melee damage to bosses for a burst damage setup. For melee weapons, we use the Fatebreaker. In my opinion, the Fatebreaker is one of the best melee weapons for Clawbringer because each melee attack will restore our ward. This allows us to avoid using Vampire to get more overall melee damage, such as using Warrior instead. Since the projectiles of Fatebreaker deal lightning damage, this will also proc our crit chance from Awe. Additionally, we have the Recalling enchantment on a fire damage Fatebreaker, allowing us to double dip into crit chance and crit damage buffs from the Clawbringer's Awe skill, in combination with an additional 30% melee damage when using Storm Dragon's Judgment. You can use a different weapon if you would like to, but in my opinion, for pure melee damage, the Fatebreaker is unmatched for its balance between damage and survivability. For shields, we use the Hammer and Anvil. When our ward is damaged, a hammer will target a nearby enemy and deal melee damage. The hammers can deal critical damage, and it is a nice complement to our melee damage polarization. We run the Snowballing enchantment on the shield to deal another 20% increased damage dealt. For spells, we use the Knuckled Buffmeister. We were lucky enough to obtain an Ascended Lightning Buffmeister with melee damage enchant, melee damage buff, and ability damage buff. It's nearly a perfect role for our build, which deals primarily lightning melee damage. With the campaign bonus intelligence buff, we have a very nice overall uptime on Buffmeister for windows to deal heavy burst damage. Having a silicone ring that has a strong melee damage and melee critical damage roll, combined with a primordial purple melee damage ring with a strong melee critical damage roll. The two together is a good power spike, and I've been unable to find a legendary ring to replace the purple, as any melee critical damage above 20% is very rare. For the Amulet, we swap between the Sacrificial Skeep as a good self-heal with a 30-second cooldown, and the Universal Soldier because it currently synergizes with our Stab-O-Matic to create very high sustained DPS. I have collected many Clawbringer amulets, and the nearly 70% status damage buff on our Skeep boosted our damage considerably while giving us sustainability. For class mod, we are using the Head of the Snake. Why? Because we were lucky enough to get a Head of the Snake with +3 to Awe and plus melee damage on the additional modifier. We do not benefit from the Hydra Companions with the build, but the +3 Awe and melee damage bonus is so strong that it has dethroned my favorite Corrupted Plate Mail. You can use either one you want. In my testing with my equipment, those two class mods are the best I could obtain in my playthrough of Chaos 50 Elite and beyond. Side note, for whatever reason, it seems that you can only obtain a class mod with bonus points to Awe if it is Clawbringer and Stab-O-Mancer. I'm using a Clawbringer Berserker build, so we do not benefit from Stabomancer bonus, but Awe is too important to pass up, and since we have most of our points in a Clawbringer, we do not depend on Berserker abilities or bonus Berserker ability damage to shine. For abilities, this build uses Storm Dragon's Judgment for the Recalling Enchantment for plus 30% melee damage and Storm Smite to help with our crit chance and crit damage Awe uptime. You can respec the build into whatever you'd like, but I personally find the Unrelenting Rage passive from the Berserker tree and Unarmored Defense plus Radiance combo far too important to run anything else. Everyone is tired of being one-shot in Chaos Chamber, and this build can trade damage and even tank damage to progress or farm Chaos 50 Elite with general ease. For areas of improvement, I would prefer more Ascended gear, but the damage increases are very negligible, and it's not worth the burnout regrinding the entire build just for Ascended. Our stat rolls seem to be important and much harder to replicate. I'd prefer Tyrant's Truth or Corrupted Plate Mail opposed to our Head of Snake class mod, but again, it's very hard to get a perfect roll for our desired class mods. I would like to get better rings too, but I simply cannot find rings with better melee crit damage bonuses. Disclaimer, this build will thrive in most content, but expect to struggle on Imelda during your random Chaos runs. For trials, this build will do just fine. We have a save file available if you would like to test the build. Head on over to twitch.tv/spacedraggy and follow the channel. Following is free and does not cost anything, and it helps support me to make future Wonderlands content. After following, type !Dragon Knight, no space, into the chat, and a Google Drive URL will come up to download the save file. I again apologize for follower-only mode. As a small streamer, Twitch does virtually nothing to protect my channel from being raided by phishing link or spam bots, and we are forced to remain in follower-only mode. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that loot luck favors you and you enjoy your experiences in the Wonderlands. Have a great day and happy summer.
most infamous, if not elite, legion. Conscripted from criminals and political outcasts and tempered in the front lines of the Empire's most brutal wars. The only regiment of the Emperor's legions has survived the massacre in the capital, if you could consider the losses we suffered surviving. I'd love to tell you our history, but I really have more important matters to attend to, such as the mission I need you